Okay, you guys, we are back for issue 3 of Where Monsters Lie. After this, there's only one more issue and then the series is done. And like always, I always recommend you guys get these comics for yourself because you know I summarize this shit. There's a lot of detail and little artwork I leave out. So you may catch stuff and find stuff fascinating that I initially left out. And if you're looking for a place to get these yourself, you can find it on Amazon and Kindle. You can look on my Amazon storefront under I think my book club tab. And that always has what I'm reading or reviewing on TikTok on there. Quick little nail check. Now see, G-Way over here, Granny, she's mad because she's like, I knew Wilmhurst would not stay a secret forever with these reckless ass killers that I got here. Another dude, Bob Roth over there, he's looking like it's a war zone now. Now see, G-Way, she ain't new to this. So she's like, once we get out of town, I need you to ignite all the explosives that I have underneath the house. So you know, she had a failsafe just in case this shit went left. And clearly it is, just not by the killer's hand, by the cop. Well, kind of the cops and the killer. And the dude's like, her henchman is like, you really think that's necessary? And she's like, do you think that after this bloodshed that the cops and the law enforcement, the FBI won't be descending on this land? There's too much evidence here. We need to get rid of it all. And he's like, I gotta go let out Baphomet. So pretty much, you remember when our final boy, the black final boy, he was in that barn and he heard that growling? So he's like, oh, I gotta let out my baby. So that's where his mind is. But the cop at the gate, he's like, I'm sorry, I can't let nobody out of this neighborhood. Orders. But here's my thing. Why ain't you more geeked up about the chaos that you can hear happening within that town? Like, I'm sure it sounds like a war zone. But, you know, G-Way over here, she's like, there's a lot of bad men and women over there. It's really scary. You know, putting her innocent old lady charm. And he's like, ma'am, I understand, but see, it's too late because Granny's already going in her little coin purse. And she's about to make change out of this dude. So Granny gets out the Uzi and she's just like, off with your head. And then she says to her henchman, aka Bob Ross, aka Wyatt, pretty much, you've gotten soft in old age. And we don't got no time for weakness, especially not in the middle of a war. So meanwhile, we go back into the neighborhood where we left off in a previous issue. And this dude is like, what kind of chaos is going on? He sees the clown with the blowtorch. He sees the psycho lady who's in love with the dummy with a gun. And then behind him, he hears somebody making a jingle about eating a man's ears. Talking about 4 ears are a lot of fun, 6 ears is a collection. So the cannibal gets off of the deceased cop's ears and he looking at the detective like, this nigga a munch and it's lunchtime. But the detective's like, I got bigger fish to slay here and it's not you. So let me handle it. And blasts his hungry hippo eating ass away. Let's just say there's no coming back for this one. Meanwhile, Wyatt's back at his house, and clearly he misses his family, so he has some type of mysterious backstory where he used to be a normal man. He probably left his wife and kids for a life of crime, but he's getting some last-minute, mementos and stuff like that, and to release his dog. Because since he can't save his neighborhood, you gotta set man's best friend free. Meanwhile, we got Bonnie and Clyde over here having a shootout still, and Twisty the clown with a blowtorch still burning up these pigs, making double crisp bacon and shit. And you know, he's too happy because his motivation was gone lately, and he was like, I knew this flamethrower was a good idea. But honey, all their joy is about to get cut short. And he start blasting at Twisty the clown, and let's just say he gave him some new dental work. He's like, pretty much, bitch, I got you some cotton candy to chew on. It's made of bullet. But then a Slappy over here he go, he after another cop because he ran out of bullets now. And finally, an officer who's thinking like us, look, he's like, I know this ain't no motherfucking dummy wreaking havoc over here. So he yanks him up like he's a bad kid touching stuff in the store. And you see Polly Pocket down there, she's like, Frankie. And the detective throws his little bitty ass into them flames. But Slappy emerges from them flames like a phoenix. He's like, bitch, I don't burn. So now he running to the detective on his eyes set fire to the rain type shit. But the detective got a low tolerance for bullshit after everything he went through. So he yeets his ass out of here. He's like, boy, get your hot crotch head ass out of here. And since the dog was already on fire, he was like, let me put some finishing touches on it. And he shoots at it so it explodes. And his poor old psychotic girl, she's like, Frankie, my love. And she catches his face because, you know, that's the only part she got left of him. And the detective's like, I don't got time for a hoe like you either. He's like, blow. And he takes a moment, he's looking around because he's looking at all the officers that got slain, and he was like, y'all with all these guns and weapons, was that so hard? Look, it took him to leave Granny's house, and he took out so many of them, and they had strength in numbers, and they couldn't even do it. But suddenly he feels the slice in his back, and something that nicked him when he wasn't paying attention. And he sees it to be his orphan brother, St. Julian, and he gives chase to him in the woods. So now they go into the woods, and the other officers down here, they like, what even is this place? This is like a an amusement park for serial killers. So our boy, the detective, he just went through this neighborhood slaying these serial killers. But then the one that we know from his past from the last issue, St. Julian, who they were in an orphanage together and they've been having beef. Julian's been after the detective here since they was kids. What reason, you ask? He crazy. So him and St. Julian takes the battle into the woods. Meanwhile, these cops are like, what did we get ourselves into? Protect and serve, sir. But they mad because mainly they just getting served. So these cops are doing like recaps among each other of what they just saw pretty much. And like one of the cops said, when he saw the detective defeat that dummy, he thought he was kicking a baby up in the air. And the other one thought it was just like some crazy like little kid. So it shows you everybody's head is somewhere else. And the cops are like, well, at least you didn't get burnt alive like Dan did, as they just walk through this carnage all casually. And then they make the mistake to go through F Master's garden. And y'all know how we feel about our gardens. And you know that in the beginning, in the first issue, they was already complaining because F Master has lost his like zeal to kill. So he's been mainly focusing on his garden. So the fact that these cops are just trampling through it, oh, y'all about to set him up. And next thing you know, F Master, he comes out there with a lawnmower. Because he's like, honey, it's time to get these weeds out of my garden. And the cop is like, what the hell now? And the other cop is like, is that a man with a teddy bear on his head? And F Master's like, oh, honey, you worried about the wrong thing. Because I guarantee you, this may be a bear on top of my head, but this ain't no Care Bear. Because you play with a man's garden, you're going to get the blade. And as y'all know, I got to cover certain things up because, you know, TikTok likes to play games with certain people, especially, and ignore the rest. So let's just say he plucked all the weeds from his garden, well, some of them, and then he ran away. But here's my thing. Finish plucking all the weeds, if you know what I mean, because now he running away and his back is to them and they got guns. Rule number one, in life, in streets, in the hood, whatever you at, if somebody got a gun, don't put your back towards them. Zigzag, run any way you can, but don't put your back towards them. You're signing your own death certificate. But meanwhile, looking out of their window, we got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre crew over here, and grandpa's like, nephew, because nephew over here, he's grunting. He's like, I strongly protest that impulse you got, because, you know, the nephew, he's percolating. This is his time to come alive. They live for shit like this. But grandpa's like, pretty much, nephew, this is not the time to act. You got to live to kill another day. He was like, because what I propose for our inbred-ass family is we practice the honor tradition of minding our own damn business. And he ain't said nothing but a word. Because if more people did that, there'd be a lot less chaos in the world. Now that's a message. Finally, we get back to our favorite final boy. And, you know, he's been running all night long. And he feels like he can finally catch his breath. Because there ain't nothing worse than running and running and running. And you can't catch your breath. So now it hurts to run. But you got to get to safety also. But he begins to hear that growl. Because remember, Wyatt, a.k.a. Bob Ross, earlier, he set free the Baphomet. Like that demon hound. And our final boy, he's like, can I get a break? Because I'm tired of this bullshit. He's like, these white people is crazy. So after hearing them growls, he's making a run for it. Next thing you know, he hears, hey, yo, freeze. And then now he has to worry about another serial killer, if you know what I mean. So they tell him, freeze. And he's like, you guys know me. I rode in a car with you. Y'all brought me back here. But low-key, they're doing abuse of power because they're mad at him. He's like, they're like, yeah, but you led us here and you knew how these people pretty much were. He's like, you pretty much led us back to this neighborhood of horrors, even though he was the victim and y'all shouldn't have brought him back there because your job is to be brave and bold, apparently. I have yet to see the brave part in real life or in comic. But the kid is like, pretty much, y'all made me come back here. And then the other cop is like, listen, everyone that popped out here has tried to kill us. We're just not taking any chances, excuse me. And the fact that these cops know this kid, they brought him back there, they saw him come into the police office and stuff like that. He's like, is this because I'm black? And pretty much, we know it is. The only thing difference between those killers that he's running from and these killers is they get a paycheck. And then the other fat-ass officer is like, maybe we should just shoot him here to be safe. But before they can even react, they hear that same growl that our final boy heard earlier. Next thing you know, you got Clifford running out the woods looking for a Scooby snack. He see these two officers. He like, oh, I see bacon. And it became dinner time, as he should. And our final boy, he's like, why the hell is this dog so big? But the dog turns around, he looks at him, he's like, I'm still hungry. And our final boy is like, on that note, I'm gonna be out. So our final boy is doing what he does best, and he's running. He's like, I'm getting out of here. I'm not staying around, I'm not investigating. You chasing me, I'm out of here. And he goes running to a house to hide in because he got to find somewhere to duck and cover. There's too much shit going on around him. The woods ain't safe, the neighborhood ain't safe, the police ain't safe. It's really him for himself. And with all these killers there, he's like, okay, I'm going to find somewhere I can hide out for a while. So he finally escapes the dog. So he slams the door because, they got that big ass hellhound outside. And he's like, this dog could probably eat through the door. So he turns around to go hide in the house. But bitch, he turns around and guess whose house he's in? The house he originally escaped along with those boys in the beginning. If that ain't a full circle moment from the beginning of him escaping the house to him running back into the house. And he's like, what are you doing here? He's like, it don't matter. We about to play a new puzzle game. And he's creepy, so you can only imagine what kind of puzzle he's trying to put together. This boy is like, man, F everything about my life. And I was like, I agree with you. Now we in the woods with the detective in St. Julian, and they battling it out because it's finally part 2 of the battle that they had back in the orphanage days when Julian tried to kill him. And Julian's trying to antagonize him. He's like, the reason why we love knives is because all of our victims ain't nothing more than just me. And the detective is like, bitch, you can hold that creepy ass monologue, ho. Let's throw these hands. And Julian's looking at him like, you didn't bring shit to this knife battle. And the detective's like, bitch, I brought my hand. And they go at it. And this is just years of pent-up aggression. Julian hates that he has a survivor, and then the detectives hates for all the trauma that he's been instilled with from these killers, because St. Julian isn't the only killer that attacked him. Remember, at the fair, his mom and sister was killed by Granny and that big Jolly Green Giant dude. But honey, the detective's like, Julian, let me tell you Defense 101. The first thing we're taught is how to disarm somebody with a weapon. Next thing you know, he hitting Julian with the twist and shout, and then with a little bit of beat, skeet, and boogie. And you know that saying, you live by the sword, you die by the sword? That's exactly what happens to St. Julian. And he makes his neck a shish kebab. And Julian's like, this motherfucker really done got me. And I'm just paraphrasing. This is just my thoughts. Julian, his sick mind, is probably like, you know what? Even though he done got me, I'm happy to know I done made a monster low-key. But the detective is like, see, this is what happens. See, y'all sick killers are used to preying on, naive teenagers, and sorority girls and people in college. You picked the right bitch on the wrong day. And with St. Julian gasping for his last breath, the detective is looking down at him. He's like, honey, I thought wiping you monsters out was gonna be a challenge. And it will be, to be continued. Issue number 4 of Where Monsters Lie, the last issue. Here's the nail check. So as we left off in issue 3, our favorite final boy escaped back into the killer's house that started all this mess. Now, I can't move my head because the image is kind of explicit, because if you watched issue 1, you know that Puzzle Man, the killer that was after him and those boys who tried to escape in the very first issue, he's very much so a creep, if you know what I mean. And I'm not gonna lie, them starting out the first page of this comic like this really emphasized to me, even though it was a whole book about monsters and stuff like that and killers, this image, it was kind of like the shock value of it really showed, and I think the writers and the illustrators did perfectly at showing how much of despicable humans these people are. And it shows you the magnitude beyond it just being a comic book. Because Puzzle Man put a guillotine around his you-know-what. And he's kind of like putting them through this jigsaw-like saw scenario. And Puzzle Man is pretty much telling him, sir, you gotta play, because guess what? That container is gonna fill with water, so you're gonna drown either way. So you either play the game or you die if you do, you die if you don't. And he's like, this ain't even a puzzle, this is just torture. And he's like, no, it's a puzzle, believe me. The options I'm about to give you is gonna make you quite befuddled. He's like, now I'm gonna give you 2 options. And our final boy's like, that's not a puzzle either. You're just giving me choices. And he's like, why are you trying to ruin this for me, dude? A real creep. And he's pretty much like, here's the good part. If you choose before the receptacle tank fills with water, you won't drown and you'll be set free. However, the option's gonna be crazy. You can either choose to lose your dominant hand, he's like, or you can get your Chico stick chopped off. He's on his evil genius here. He think this is just the best, most toughest plan in the world. Because to him, he's like, this is an impossible option. The shit is a lose-lose all the way around. But the boy's like, forget that. I'll lose the hand. Click. Now, here's my question to y'all. Which one would y'all pick? So, now he's there. He's like, I guess I won't be asking for no more high fives. However, since he made the choice, remember how Puzzle Man said, if you make a choice, which he thought he wouldn't be able to, everything else gets unlocked. And that's what happened. And everything begins to set him free. Because I think what Puzzle Man didn't realize is, when you put somebody through enough trauma, that adrenaline gets to going. So they're in fight or flight mode. And he's been in a fight mode for the last, 24 hours as we seen throughout all these issues. So once again, as my boy should, he took this moment. He's like, okay, I'm out of here. And he gets to booking it. And then Puzzle Man is like, hey, come back here, as if he's going to turn around politely and sit right back down. So Puzzle Man is giving chase to him. He's like, because how has he lost this much blood and has not passed out yet? And then he gets a call from behind. He's like, hey, Puzzle Man, I got a puzzle for you now, ho. He says, why did the escaped tortured victim not run away? He's like, that's a riddle, not a puzzle. Like, nigga, because they found the flamethrower laying on the ground. And remember, that flamethrower was more than likely the clown that we seen in issue, 2, 3, who got killed early. Meanwhile, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family, aka Leatherface and his family, Grandpa's like, all right now, you can go out there and have some fun and take some lives, nephew. And after our favorite final boy sets the Puzzle Man ablaze and gives him a new puzzle to figure out, he faints from all the blood loss, and probably just from everything he went through. And Grandpa pretty much tells Leatherface, why don't you go out there and find some of that good human flesh so we can have something to eat later. But he tells him, be mindful, do not cross Daniel Dawson. So pretty much what Grandpa's saying is, both you big ass niggas is two forces of evil, and pretty much since you guys are so ruthless, you guys won't stop until the other one is demise. So stay out of each other's way, pretty much, Grandpa's telling Leatherface. And then Leatherface over here talking like Scooby-Doo, talking about Aru. But that's just probably because of the inbreeding. So now our favorite detective with anger issues is gonna finally face Daniel Dawson, the man that took his sister and mother's life. And hands shall be thrown. So he's like, I'm throwing hands with Daniel Dawson. But remember also what Granny said in the other issues, that the only way to really defeat him is to have a tank. He is like inhuman. Like how a lot of those horror movie monsters end up being when they get sequels after sequels and they can't come up with a logical way to end. But see, the detective don't care, because the detective's like, I'm gonna throw hands. Bitch, you can call me Crisco, because I'm popping my shit. So as you see down here, he's like trying to focus on destroying his joints and stuff like that. But as you see, after he breaks Daniel's arm, Daniel just pops that shit back in place. And Daniel's like, okay, bitch, Hulk smash. And he sends the detective flying through the air like a Pokeball when you just find a Pokemon. So Daniel's like, I'm about to end this shit. It's time to play whack-a-mole with a skull and neck. And I'm looking at him like, you did all that training just to be bodied that fast? Didn't do enough of that supernatural training, I bet. But saved by the monster, guess who walks up? Leatherface. And Leatherface is like, what's going on here? Because you see Leatherface, he got his mid-evening snack in his hand because he like roasted pig. But see, if y'all have ever watched Animal Planet or National Geographic, y'all already know what happens in the jungle when two predators spot each other. They're like, oh, bitch, it's on and popping. And why for a minute I thought that said the N-word? Or for a minute I thought it was saying run, nigga. I was gonna say, girl, you know I would. Especially if I see a white man with a chainsaw. Hell, if I see a white man in the woods, period, honey, I watch enough true crime to know I'm not risking it. Motherfucker had me over an open flame with an apple in my mouth. So Leatherface is going all Jack and a beanstalk and trying to chop him down and stuff, but Jack Dawson's like, bitch, I'm invincible. What you hoes doing? Okay, he got Leatherface talking like Scooby-Doo again. Aru? Motherfucker on his mystery machine shit. But like with his family, because you know they're inbred. Then Leatherface is like, okay, well, bitch, we gonna throw hands then. And Dawson's like, I'm tired of this shit. And he gives him one of them supersonic, hypnotic, funky, fresh punches and throws Leatherface into his she shed. And like those of us who've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, now you know Leatherface big ass would not be flying through the air like that. And then Leatherface lands in front of this shed of tools. How convenient. But seeing since the community is surrounded by woods, I can understand why they would have those like gardening tools and just shit like that there. Because remember, this family, Leatherface and his family, the Hewitts, they just moved into the neighborhood. So could you imagine what a welcome to the neighborhood? But meanwhile, over here, Wyatt over here, aka the character that looked like Bob Ross, he's sneaking through the forest because remember, Grandma told him it's time to detonate the whole neighborhood so all the files and incriminating evidence goes up in flames. So Wyatt finds Dawson in battle with Leatherface and him, and he's just warning him. He's like, hey, you better get out of here because we about to set this place up in flames. And just when he was about to turn away, girl, why kind of get a second win? And he's like, honey, let me get my ass whooped for a second. And of course, Dawson, he just suplexed that hoe. He's like, I don't know what training you got, but I need you to go back and get a refund. But you can't because you're about to die. And just before Dawson can give the death blow, he feels something tear through his heart. And guess what? It's a heavy-duty chainsaw now. And of course, I'm blocking it out because you know how TikTok like to play games with me. Girl, next thing you know, Leatherface over there talking about, did somebody order a banana split? Extra nuts, because you know he a psychopath. So, you know, now Dawson split in two, and he's like, sound nice, make it twat. But the detective's like, I'm not taking no more chances. I just got my ass whooped by the boy I was meaning to take my revenge out on because he destroyed my life. And even though this killer Leatherface saved me, I know he gonna eat me any chance he gets. So he tells them pretty much bon appetit and shoots them in his dump. So now he's trying to catch his breath, and he hears crying coming out of the wood. And his grandpa crawling to his nephew, talking about my sweet, sweet baby boy. But then he was like, I need a snack, and he started trying to eat his nephew, talking about keep it in the family. And they do. And like the detective's like, Jesus, take the... Like, I'm not dealing with you either, Grandpa. Two to the dome. So now everything's over. he begins to hear footsteps behind him and he turns around. And it's the Leatherface clan, you know, all the inbred family members. And they're just coming after him looking like something after Afterlife with Archie, a zombie. But that's what happens when your cousin is also your daddy and your daddy is also your brother. And luckily, in that moment, that's when the neighborhood is detonated. And sadly, if you remember, look at he running. And I'm like, wait a minute. Our final boy still is passed out in that neighborhood. So the neighborhood goes up in flames. Let me tell you something. The detective's boss is pissed off because he didn't have no warrant. He took one of the survivors back to the scene of the crime where now he's missing. He got every officer pretty much, if not killed, greatly injured. And his boss is like, at this point, I need you to turn in your badge and your gun. And he's trying to argue like I had probable cause, but that's not going to do no good. You know why? Because like his boss said, so where's your witness now? And he's like, it seems as if he was incinerated in the Grand Blast. And he was like, great, add more people to your kill list. So at this point, he's having the worst day of his life. He lost his job, you know, he lost his witness. He's more than likely going to be sued by all those cops' family and just everything's going down. But he returns home to his happy girlfriend. And as he walks in, his girl's like, I'm so glad you're home, honey. I got some food. My dad has arrived a couple days early. But she noticed he seems down. So she's like, Connor, babe, what's going on? And he's like, it's been a terrible day. And before he can even explain, he gets pistol whipped in the back of the head by his girlfriend's dad. And she's like, Daddy? So I'm like, is the dad a killer too? And the girlfriend is just calling out to her boyfriend like, baby, Connor, wake up. And when he finally comes to, he is sitting next to the Bob Ross lookalike. And Connor's like trying to yell to his girl, like, get away from me, he's a killer. And she's like, this is my dad. And look who's coming out of the kitchen getting some tea. Like, what's tea? And G-Way over there like, oh, Agent Hayes. She knows her dad is a killer. And you know, Granny is reveling in this. She's like, surely you're familiar with the Mortimer family and the series of death they strung together across this country. And Connor's like, oh, what is you doing here? And Granny walks over to his girl, and she's like, give him the exciting news. And the girl's like, I'm pregnant, Connor. I wanted to tell you earlier, but... And Granny pretty much cuts her off, and Granny's like, normally when somebody wages war against me, I eradicate them. They cease to exist. But as you can see, the situation has become a little bit more complicated. So Granny's like, bitch, I'm gonna give you a choice, ho. Come with us, raise your family, or you die now. And your child will be raised fatherless. And he's like, come with you killers, ho. And then the granny gives him some cold, hard facts. She's like, oh dear, you're saying that like you're not one of us. And he's like, ho, I'm not like you. He's like, it's my job to protect and serve and keep the world clean for murderous scum like you. And Granny's like, oh, ho, let me tell you something. She's like, by killing them in cold blood, don't you see, Agent Hayes? You became what you feared. It's like that quote says, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. She's like, you made yourself a weapon and weapons only exist for one reason. And I was like, okay, G-Way, spit that tea. And she's like, little did you know from everything that you went through and us letting you survive back then, we were planting seeds, Agent Hayes, and you just so happened to blossom into a marvelous, beautiful, murderous garden. And then Bob Ross look like over here, he's like, at the end of the day, my daughter's carrying your child, which makes you family, unfortunately. And he's like, I take that extremely serious. So either join us or you against us. And Granny's like, and ho, accept your destiny. Because Granny's like, it's not a hard choice. Either be with your family or you die painfully. And then his girl's like, this doesn't change anything between us. Trying to push that bullshit. She's like, you still love me. I still love you. We have a baby. Come on, let's be together. So pretty much just bullshitting all the way around. Gaslight. But he got to think of his child first. Because when you become a parent, that's selfless. So he's like, oh, where would we go? And Granny, with a face that's as wrinkly as a Texas road map, she's like, honey, we gonna go to Site B, aka Wilmhurst too. So there's another neighborhood out there full of kills. So Granny got her hand everywhere. And just when we think it's over, our final boy starts coughing and he wakes up on some grass. And he's like, where the fuck? Where am I? Is this the afterlife? Because life has been life. And as he sits up, he sees his arm is wrapped up. So he's like, what's going on? Who took care of it? And he looks over and he's like, a bitch can't take a break. A bitch cannot get a break. And that is the end of Where Monsters Lie issue 4. I definitely hope they continue with this series because I definitely want to see what happens to our favorite final boy. Because I kind of feel like with the way the writers are doing it, it's going to be like a running gag where he's just like a series of unfortunate events and he always escapes by the skin of his teeth.